Okay, here we are now in video 4 of Grading in the Pandemic, and I'll be talking for a few minutes about the most common option that schools are adopting for pandemic grading. And that's a traditional letter grade as usual, or as an alternative, a P&P type of grade. The vast majority of schools that have alternate grading policies are going with a letter grade option type of policy. 166 out of the 180 policies that I've bookmarked have a letter grade policy. With all those schools, you can imagine that there's a lot of variety among those policies. So what I want to do here is not present any kind of systematic taxonomy. I just want to suggest a few important questions you can ask about these different policies as you weigh their advantages and disadvantages. Do students get to see their final grade before choosing whether to take the P&P option? This is, to me, the single most important question to ask. If one of the goals of the alternate grading policy is to reduce student stress and return some measure of control to their lives, I personally think all students should get to see their final grade before choosing their grading option. That is the policy my school adopted, and I'm very glad about that. Other schools, however, are forcing students to choose the grading option before final exams or even before the last day of instruction, sometimes as early as mid-April. Is P&P the default, or is letter grade the default? For an example of default P&P, see what Duke University has done. All courses will be recorded as P or NP, and it is then up to the student to opt for a traditional letter grade if they want. By making P&P the default, schools can remove the stigma associated with that option, while still acknowledging that individual students, for their own personal and private reasons, might choose to take the letter grade instead. Is there just one P grade for passing? There are ranking high P and low P. Yes, there are schools which are basically encoding C and D grades as two different kinds of passing grades, high P and low P. This is just a guess on my part, but I would assume this high P, low P system is being put in place in order to decide whether students will or will not be able to get credit for their major courses with a P grade. The question of credit for major courses comes up again and again in these policies, along with whether or not the P would count for gen ed and other graduation requirements, first-year composition, and so on. What actually is a passing grade? One of the arguments against grades is that they really are meaningless when taken out of context. A grade might have some meaning in the specific context of a specific class, but all those letters and pluses and minuses have no objective meaning in and of themselves. So, not surprisingly, nobody's really sure what passing a class would mean, and you will find all the possible breakpoints being used. Maybe you have to get a C, or maybe a D, or maybe a D plus, or a D minus might be a passing grade. Because it's all arbitrary, each school is making it up as they go along. And here's the biggest question of all. What if the reasons for ungrading in the pandemic are actually an argument for using alternate grading all the time? What if students are always under a lot of stress, with grades adding to that stress and getting in the way of learning? What if that level of stress is distributed very unequally among students so that getting good grades is a result of privilege as much as it is a result of actual learning? What if the best way to promote academic integrity is actually just to get rid of grades and focus on learning instead? What if we admitted that GPA and grade ranking are all just an illusion without any objective foundation? Yes, I know it seems strange to think about teaching without grading, but the pandemic, strangely enough, shows that it might actually be possible, not just in a specific classroom, but for entire institutions. So in the next video, I'm going to shift into the classroom and talk about what it's like to teach without grading. Short version, great.